an opportunity to even grow enough food for the next day. So there are many faces of hunger in Latin America, and we're helping to address the situation.
Great, thanks, and apologies to those. I have a little computer glitch. Hopefully now you're seeing some of the images of Church World Service food security and nutrition work around the world. Who largely is affected, excuse me, by hunger? Is it one class of people? Is it one minority of folks? Is it indigenous persons? Don, why don't you take that?
You ask me or you ask Don?
Oh, Vitaly, you can go ahead. Sure,
okay.
That's fine.
So we have group, these called vulnerable groups such as employed, minority groups, refugee, internally displaced, people with disabilities, elderly. In addition to this most vulnerable, single female-headed household, large family, and children with one parent. Continuing concern is growing vulnerability of children. Malnutrition is 2 times greater in children from refugee, internally displaced families than in average population.
How about you, Don? I mean, is it as clear-cut as that in Latin America, or are we talking about an indigenous group or set of groups, or people marginalized just because of their socioeconomic status, or give us a picture of who it is that's affected by hunger?
We have a wide variety of context in Central America. For example, in Guatemala, you do have a high indigenous population that you don't see in Honduras or Nicaragua or the Dominican Republic. However, the people that are the most vulnerable are the ones in the rural area, the ones that are maybe hopefully making $1 a day or less on whatever they can find work on. Like I said earlier, women and children. But it really depends on the ethnicity of where we're working. So, but it is most of the time it just has to do with access to land, access to opportunities. So as people who are in very remote areas. However, we are seeing a trend of people that are wanting to look for work and moving to the urban areas. So there is a lot of poor in urban areas too, as they try to find opportunities to improve their way of life.
Now, let me just pick up on that, Don, and ask you: Does that mean that we're looking at adapting our programming a little bit, because so much of our program is tied to the rural areas in Latin America? How might we adapt programs and address some of these hunger issues in the urban areas across the region?
Correct. That with most of our work right now is in the rural and farming area. We need to see about opportunities in urban settings, maybe like urban gardens or urban opportunities as well, where people are able to be sustainable. But right now, there's just so much great need in the rural setting, and most of our focus and most of the work with our partners, it is in the agricultural remote areas of Guatemala and Honduras, Nicaragua, where people really don't have any access at all, opportunity for work.
So that's something that might expand over time. That's a way our work is changing, adapting from being rural to more urban.
It is something that we're keeping and monitoring the situation.
Okay, Vitaly, let me pose a similar question to you. Is across Eastern Europe, do we see hunger as largely a rural affair, or are we starting to see a shift to the cities?
Both, because of course affected both areas, and we are working in rural and in urban area, depend on situation. For instance, we are working with Roma population. You see a picture, you show the living condition of Roma settlement. So we are working with this population, this most vulnerable category of vulnerable population in urban area. But at the same time, we are working with refugee IDPs and in rural areas.
Could you talk a little bit about the refugee situation from the Balkans War there in the early 1990s? And,
yeah, unfortunately, not only 90s, because in Georgia from 2 years ago they had conflict. So we have a huge amount of refugee IDPs in regions. It's largest population in Europe. We have in Serbia from Kosovo more than 200,000 IDPs from Kosovo we have now, and before we had a lot of refugees from Croatia and Bosnia, but now less, but still a lot, and we have more than 200,000 IDPs in Georgia. So altogether it's approximately 500,000 only refugee and IDPs we are working and supporting years and years.
And how do we support them? What is it we do for these people who have been forced from their homes and haven't been able to return?
Various of program depend on situation, but we call our program Durable Solution for Displaced Population. So we provide construction materials, we provide training for them, we buy land sometimes and house, depend especially in rural area, and also we support training, vocational training, and income generation activities.
So helping people earn work while they're displaced.
Yeah, and move from refugee camp for collective center. So we're trying to support these people together with other agencies.
Okay, and you used an acronym there. We should probably explain. IDP stands for Internally Displaced Persons. These are people who have been forced from their homes but haven't necessarily been forced away from their country. Don, can you just give us a look at how we're working on the ground in Latin America? What are our programs like? What kind of things are we doing to fight hunger?
In Latin America, one of the strengths that we have is that we work with a lot of local partners and people who are committed to make a change and a better way of life for families in their own countries and their own communities. So most of the work is working, and we like to have the concept that we want our peoples to be the subject of their own change and not the object of change. What does that mean is that, as Billy mentioned, training and working with families to identify first what their needs and priorities are, and then to accompany them and walk with them to try to solve the solutions. It's a long process and very time-consuming process, but it's really sustainable when families understand what the root causes are of their situation and are able to identify with assistance how to address those root causes and how to make a change. We really see as food security not just a concept of providing food or having a bountiful harvest, but also what does food security with nutrition mean? What does it mean to have a diversified crop? What does it mean to have an opportunity to have more than 1 or 2 crops per year and eat healthier? Most of the families in Latin America are used to, their main diets are tortillas and beans, and that's what they have access to. So when you start incorporating other like fruit trees and have vitamins and vegetable gardens, where not only they can provide a diversified and healthier diet, but are able to provide food on the table year-round. And like Billy said, be able to produce a little extra where they can be able to sell in local markets and have income. That is what we call more of a sustainable way of working, and that's what our partners are doing, engaging with local families and communities.
You know, I appreciate that you brought up the idea that Church World Service is there for the long haul, and as I've had the pleasure of going around and speaking with Crop Hunger Walk organizers and participants across the U.S., that's one of the things that's repeated most often to me. Can you talk a little bit about our long-term work? In other words, you don't just go in overnight and set up, let's say, a food program in Honduras. It takes a lot of little different pieces, and isn't that right?
Correct, and it takes a lot of organizing people, and we like to also not work with individual families, but in groups of families or cooperatives, because there's a support system there. And also there's a way that it mitigates against a negative spiral of vulnerability. When people are able to work together and support each other, but there's a lot of work in not only doing a lot of training so we can learn new techniques or relearn techniques that have been lost through the ancestry of being passed down, on what can be done locally takes a lot of time. But once families are able to see and produce or see themselves that they're subject to change and they can change, then it makes things a lot easier because then they're more engaged. And then when other community members see the change in the families that we're working with, they want to be part of the program. They understand it's not easy. They understand it's a lot of work and a lot of going to trainings and not quick or what we call microwave development. But when they can see the long-term effect, they want to be part of that. And that's what's great when we have families that want to be participating in our programs.
If you want to talk about long-term, Vitaly, I think your program best illustrates that, in that we're investing in largely programs that serve vulnerable children across Eastern Europe. Can you talk a little bit about your children's programs and how we're fighting hunger in that way?
So as I already mentioned, most affected by this crisis, and food crisis in region and global crisis, affect primarily children and vulnerable children. So because of this situation, and Church of Southern Europe decided to pay more attention for school feeding program, for a feeding program for children, for provided meals for vulnerable children. And we are calling this program including early childhood education program for minority group. Through our program, we provide at least 2 times daily meals for children. It's more than 200 children, but not only. So one is because we are faith-based organization. We primarily focus here, for instance, in Serbia, we pay attention for soup kitchen, because we found less and less fund available for soup kitchen, and more people request this kind of assistance. But we are not simply providing food for vulnerable people, for refugees, for displaced, for most social cases and children. We are primarily support agriculture production and invest in Red Cross agriculture production. So this project includes vulnerable children, this project including refugee and displaced and local population. So I can talk about our program broader. Mm-hmm. Yes? Matt, do you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I do. I hear you well. I was just going to ask a follow-up question. I had the privilege of visiting your program late last year, or in the middle of last year, and one of the things that struck me is how you're fighting long-term prejudice against the Roma by bringing together all of these children who are affected by your region's current unemployment and food security problems, and therefore they have something in common. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Because we found like Roma suffering not because they're Roma or minority, they're suffering because they're poor, because poverty. The same situation with displaced and local population. So I found they have the same situation. Doesn't matter what kind of background they have, what kind of a national group or religion group they belong. So they equal, and we treat equal all of them. So we pay attention especially, and we provide special service for vulnerable children, and not only minority group. So all who affected by hunger and poverty. So we call our program an integration program, including early childhood education program for all children in our target area.
And just one quick follow-up to that. I mean, we talk about the Roma. Can you just sum up and give us a brief idea of who we're talking about? What's life like for them?
You know, so the majority of them, they're IDPs, internally displaced from Kosovo. Some of them are local. They're the minority group suffering a lot in the whole region, not only here in Serbia or Moldova, where we are working. And so because the background, there's a lot of bias against this minority group, and they are really very hard for them. They are most vulnerable and most poor population in region. And so they are affected this crisis again because very hard for them to find job, and I would like to say impossible for them to find a job. They living in illegal settlement and in Belgrade and all Serbia. So they are simply surviving and to collect some paper, some kind of labor work. So it's very hard for them really to have access for education, for health security. So this one is reason why Church of Soils pay attention for this category of population.
Don, let me build off the idea of helping what we call vulnerable children with you. Can you give me an idea or tell me a story about who a vulnerable child is? What does that mean? What does it look like?
Well, just one clear example, in Haiti, there's a system called the Reste Avec system. And I don't know if people have heard of that before, but Reste Avec basically means child domesticity, where children are, I kind of make it the example of the Cinderella story without the happy ending, where children are seconded or sent to other families or sold to other families with the hope that they'll have access to education and health systems in the capital from the rural areas. And we're working, our program there is working with helping the adopted families or the foster families and giving them the service, but also giving service to these children that they have rights. They have a right to be a child, that they have a right to education. So they provide social services, they provide educational services, but it's not only working with the children, but it's working with the whole family nucleus system or the home system to improve the life of the family. A great example is that through our program in Haiti, in the education, most of the children don't have access to schools, and the program provides the education which is licensed through the Haiti state now, and 90% of the children participating in our program pass the state licensing of what would be like a 6th grade education only after 3 years of classes. So it's a very intensive, but it's wonderful. It gives opportunity for the children to get education and improve their way of life. They're also teaching them about the culture, the Haitian culture, the tradition, through dance and through art, which also is like a therapy way of working with children to assisting them in where they are.
Vitaly, you raised the concept of social orphans earlier. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about who they are. You know, who are these kids who have been left behind by their parents when they go to work, and what kind of things do Crop Hunger Walk funds do to support them?
Yeah, so it's a special program Church also is implementing in Moldova. So what already Don mentioned about foster families, we're also involved in this program in supporting orphans and also supporting social orphans. We are calling not like 3 children, a social orphans, the children with parents, but parents because economical crisis left country searching for job and abroad, and so they are left children with grandparents, with neighbor, or without anybody, and so they are become victims of trafficking, becomes victim a criminal, and so Church for Soils provide assistance this kind of category of children we are calling social orphans.
I want to turn our attention now to water programs. If you're a Crop Hunger Walk veteran, chances are you've heard us talk about the linkage between having clean, safe water and a sustainable food source for families around the world. Donna, I was wondering if you could give us just a glimpse at what not having clean water looks like in some of these rural communities.
Thanks, Matt. It is true that most of the families in the rural area do not have access to clean, potable water or water systems where if a family has a faucet for the community or for the house, that's a blessing. Not having clean water leads to a lot of diseases, which like leads to the negative spiral of families never being able to get out of poverty or hunger situations if they're always getting sick of bacteria due to the water they're drinking. One of the things that we've been working in Nicaragua is testing water test samples, and when families actually see what's in the water, and that gives them the empowerment to see that they need to make a change of the water systems, and they go to local municipalities or local water boards to see what can be done to improve the water quality. Because, I mean, water is the source of life, and without good, clean water, there's a lot of negative effects. But not only if you don't have access to water, you're not able to water your crops, but if you're not drinking clean, potable water, leads to many, many other issues. For example, like being sick all the time. Which, and if you're sick all the time, you can't work or you can't go to school. So it is very important to have access to good, clean, potable water.
And that's not something that's just limited to rural areas, is it, Vitaly? I mean, this is something that we see across Eastern Europe, which is a little more developed, a lack of access to clean, safe drinking water, and how that plays out in fighting hunger.
Yeah, but Matt, unfortunately, I would like to inform you, water supply and sanitation sector have increasingly degraded in Eastern Europe. For instance, over 50% of population in Moldova use drinking water that does not comply with sanitary norm. In rural areas, situation is worse. In Moldova, 60% of water in rural area don't meet any biological or chemical standard. So it is official statistic, but we are working on this program, and in reality is 90% of rural population don't have any access to safe drinking water. So Church also is involved in this program, and I'm so proud to inform you, especially for sanitation. We are in last year we opened 2 eco toilets for schools, for 2 schools, and so because water is polluted by chemical and organic, so and we are involved in this program.
And this is something that Crop Hunger Walk dollars go to fund. It's something that is vital in the fight against hunger, is it not? I mean, we're talking 90%.
For us, yes, in Latin America.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And like Billy said too, the access to water, just creating rain catchment systems or water systems that are then tubed to communities, it sounds very simple, but and we hear stories too of people walking hours and hours just carrying buckets of water just to have enough water for a day. So once you're able to build water systems and collect the rainwater and collect water and able to tube it down to communities, makes a big difference. But like you said earlier, it's not only just providing the water to the communities, but making sure it is that it's purified or it's been cleaned, or teaching people how to clean water or how to purify water. Just simply using some Clorox bleach in their water systems can make a big difference. So a lot is also education after providing the water sources.
I wonder if you all would like to clear up, is there one misconception about hunger for each of you that you would like to address, just so that people know? And Vitaly, let's go to you first.
You know,
one misconception.
Yeah, sometimes people opinion about we are in Europe, especially Eastern Europe and Balkan, we don't have any problem with hunger, we don't have any problem with food security, and it's not true. So we have really huge problem. And for your information, only small part, less than 10% of those who are malnutrition are covered by social assistance program. Many vulnerable people don't get any kind of help. For instance, in Serbia, the kitchen run by the Red Cross is preparing daily meal for about 16,000 people but more than 200,000 needed this kind of assistance. So one example, so again I would like to say we need to advocate and also provide true information about situation in Eastern Europe and Balkans.
Don, how about you? Is there something that strikes you as a common misconception?
Well, I concur with my colleague Billy. Just the notion sometimes if there's hunger in Latin America. For example, Guatemala has one of the highest percentages of malnutrition in the rural areas. Even though Guatemala has been improving their GDP in certain other areas, as other countries improve in GDP in our region, does not mean that this improvement is getting to making an effect on the poorest of the poor while we're working. So there is a lot of needs and a lot of poverty and a lot of hunger still in Latin America. But also the misconception is that I like to just talk about is that people just want to have an opportunity to be able to provide for their families, to work, to have access to land. And the misconception sometimes is people just want to receive aid. But in Latin America, people really want to be actors of their change. They just want to have an opportunity, and they are hardworking. They do care about their children. They do care about making a better way of life for their families. And so then it's not like they're just waiting for people to come and help them. They want to be part of the change in their lives.
It strikes me that that might be one thing that is unique about Crop Hunger Walk and Church World Service. And we touched on it earlier when we were talking about being with communities for the long haul. And Vitaly, you can address this if you don't mind. Do you see the work that we do in Eastern Europe as being unique and distinct from other aid agencies that might work in the region?
You know, yes, a lot of work we are doing the same as a region, but I already mentioned what we are unique because we pay attention for soup kitchen. But in not simply provided food, we produce food and distribute the food. More than 1,000 people benefit daily from our program. We including children, especially we pay and we will continue to support this kind of program. We are doing a lot of advocacy work, especially advocacy campaign, Food for Everyone, through community resource mobilization. So we involve churches, we involve community, private business. We are thinking we are not unique, but we pay attention for this, and we hope we have very good results. And also we are involved in climate change issue. And for your information, you know about this. Last year, Church World Service Europe received international award related to this issue.
Received an international award related to climate change. Please tell us a little more about what that was about.
You know, we received an award from Action by Church Together last year, and in cooperation with our local partner in Georgia. So we are proud because we are provide a special focus for community to deal with climate change. So major direction our support, and we receive international award because we are supporting community to use renewable energy resources by building solar water heaters and solar dryer for fruit and vegetable. We are supporting affected community in decreasing environmental degradation through crop rotation. And also we pay attention building awareness and capacity in local community to reduce climate change risks, use renewable energy sources, and generate much needed income. In activity involve organizing regional and community meeting. So we have a lot of result in impact our program, and we are planning to sharing our experience between our regional offices and between our local partner in the region this year.
Don, let's turn to you and across Latin America and the Caribbean. I mean, Church World Service is not the only NGO doing work in the region, but I think our work is unique. I was wondering if you could address that and tell us a little bit about what you think our niche is and how we are distinct.
I really do believe that our work is very unique and very special in Latin America. As I mentioned earlier, we work with local partners and we work through partnerships. And we sit down with people in communities to address or to identify with them what their needs are. So it's not like we're coming in with all the answers and from the north saying we're the experts. But we're able to sit down with families and they really appreciate. They don't see church service as just as a donor. They see the accompaniment in the relationship. And many people tell us, or tell me, see, when you visit us, we really feel the presence of church service. We really feel the accompaniment. We understand that you're not here just to give us, but to be with us. And that, to me, that's a very special feeling. And people feel that the relationship part and the partnership part is just as important or more important than just giving or providing funds or programs. So to me, that is a niche that a lot of other organizations don't have, that it goes to the faith down to the root of what we are and what they are, and the closeness that we have and the relationship we have with God as we try to make this world a better place.
I want to go on and invite people to begin typing their questions into the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. You'll see a little tab that says questions. You click the little caret and it opens up and you're able to type your question in. We'll get to those questions in just a minute. I was wondering if I could get each of you to tell me the story of one family or person or individual whose life has been changed by Crop Hunger Walk and Church World Service. One family who we've made a difference in their lives, and yes, if you can think of them by name, that would be helpful. But Vitaly, let's start with you. Is there one example, one clarion example that sticks out, and you think, oh yeah, this family is who I get up and go to work for every day?
It's sometimes, first of all, I would like to say we have 100 stories, and we submit to our headquarters. But one, because I'm living and working here so many years, and I would like to tell you one story, one Roma family, a large family with 7 children. He was very bad situation, and he is ready to kill himself because he didn't see any chance to survive for himself and his family. And based in our cooperation, and he received grant from Church World Service. He bought saw, purchased saw, and started to work. Now, recently, Food Resource Bank delegation visited us, and we went to this family after years, and I was myself to surprise. The family renewed, and they bought land, they bought house. The family, all children go to school, and the family looks very good. So I was so proud to see this example when with very small amount of money we can really save life, large families. We have a lot of story, but it's one example.
So just a little bit of investment totally changed a family's life forever. Don, how about you in Latin America? Is there one family or person whose life has been changed by the resources generated through Crop Hunger Walk and provided through Church World Service?
I'd like to share the story of Wilmer Miguel in Honduras. He has started what we call an integral farm. And through the process of Church World Service, working with our local partner in Church World Service, he has learned to be able to, in just 1 acre land, to divide his land up, kind of draw a plot and to identify different areas where to grow different products. For example, he has fruit trees in one area, a vegetable garden in another area, still has his cornfield, but he's also incorporated with chickens and rabbits. And the beautiful thing about this is when you visit Wilmer's farm is that you're not just visiting Wilmer, you're visiting his family. he believes very strongly to incorporate the whole family as they learn new techniques. One thing I left out is that his whole style of farming is all organic. He makes his own fertilizer, makes his own pesticides, and by making your own fertilizer, and composting, you're not having to spend money to buy fertilizer. But to him, he also says is that we need to teach our children to be able to be sustainable and change their ways of farming so they can provide for their families. So he says that not only does he use new techniques in his farm, but he wants to teach, and he says, like, farm his children's brains so they can be different. And his farm has now become a model farm where people from this neighborhood come in and want to learn from him. And recently, because of his great success in his farm, he was invited to participate in the World Food Prize in Iowa to share the great excess with a small investment, like you said, can make a big impact. And he's able to provide for his family on a year-round because he does have a diversified crop.
And just to be clear, I mean, Church World Service helped him learn new agricultural techniques and learn that sort of organic fertilizer and pesticide application. Is that it?
All the training exactly on organic fertilizer, organic pesticides, how to design your farm to be able to maximize the land that you have, raised beds, have seed banks, how to take care of your chicken, how to actually, just for simple things too, fencing in have a little corral area for your chickens so they're not out there loose and eating other seeds. A lot of people just leave animals loose in Latin America. And when they're loose, they're just eating all the good seeds or other foods that you're planting. So just simple things of corralling and training and using what you have locally, identifying local resources that you can plant or you can use or you can grow or you can eat can go a long ways as well. So correct, a lot of us working in training and teaching, even teaching old ways and doing it a different way better maybe.
And let me follow up on that. It seems like what you're saying, Don, is that you know, you go in and you work with one individual family, but after a while you build a spirit of community. Do people in these communities then begin to help each other? Is there a magnifier effect?
That's one of the great things about our program is that we call it kind of the passing of the gift, but the passing of knowledge. We want people to share with others what they're learning. And they take a great pride to say, look at my farm, look what I've been able to do. And when other families see how successful Wilmer is, like I mentioned earlier, they want to be part of that. They see that it's hard work, but they see the results. So it's a lot easier when you have one or two families that have great success to incorporate more families. So it is kind of spreading in the area, and more people want to be part of or have an integral farm because they see that you're able to provide for your family year-round. And so we call that the passing. We train Wilmer, and Wilmer trains others, and then it just keeps on spreading that way.
Great, thanks, Don. I want to go ahead and turn to some questions now. We've got a question coming out of Austin, Texas, for you, Italy. He says, Austin says that you've spoken of programs in Moldova, Serbia, and Georgia. Is CWS involved in other countries of the Balkans, or is it just those three?
No. We are working also in Bosnia, and before we implement our program, Montenegro. So right now we are working in 4 countries, but we are also we are ready for cross-border cooperation, like Belarus, Ukrainian, and so we are not. But currently we are working in 4 countries.
Question for each of you now, and Don, I guess we'll turn to you first. Can you please give an example of a specific project in your area, a specific water project, rather, in your area? What's one that comes to mind that represents a water program for you?
In Honduras, we have the program's called the protection of the microbasin. It's environmental too, but it's protection where the natural spring water source comes from. And what does that mean, the protection of that? Is to make sure that the area maintains forested, that doesn't become deforested, to maintain where the water source is clean. But then they capture that water, and they after capturing the water, have a water capturing system. They manually dig holes, trenches, all the way from the top of the mountain where the natural spring, the source water is from, located. They dig trenches and tube the water down to a community where they're able to have 1 or 2 spigots and share that water. So that's an example of a water project that after, I mean, it's a process that after you also are building a cement concrete water storage tank that can hold hundreds of gallons, and then you purify that water, treat it, and then that water is delivered down to the community levels. That's an example of one water project. In Guatemala, another example of a water project is collecting the rainwater and then using different types of stones and charcoal. They naturally clean that water, but also they recycle the water. They have a system where from the pilas, and the pilas is where the women wash the dishes or wash clothes, it's a soapy water. They drain that water through that cycle system of natural stones that cleans the water, and that's sufficient and takes all the soap away, where they're able to irrigate their greenhouses and family gardens. So they're reusing the water and not wasting the water from what we call dirty soapy water. So this is examples of some water projects that we have in Latin America, but we have many rain catchments in the Chaco area in South America, in the Gran Chaco, where they have ceramic pots to collect rainwater, so they have water year-round. But yes, water is very important.
How about you, Vitaly? Can you give us just an
we
example?
have 2 projects related to water and sanitation. One is in Georgia. Last year we implemented a special program for displaced population there without, they didn't have access to safe drinking water. So we'll help them through community involvement, through water community group organizing. So we built this system. And so we'll continue for this year too. And another one in Moldova. I'm really so proud, because we are working in rural area with awful situation with access to safe drinking water and sanitation, because rural population usually use wells, and quality of water in wells is very poor. I already mentioned about this. So we'll have the rural population to clean wells, testing quality of water with using special indicators to show local population what about situation with water, what's the quality of water, what kind of water people drink. And also we pay a lot of attention to advocacy work and education, children and local population. So we'll, especially I already mentioned, we are paying attention for access to safe sanitation, especially for school children. Last year we built 2 eco toilets for schools, and we will continue this program for individual eco sun for rural population and for schools.
I wonder if you both could elaborate a little bit, and this comes out of the Upper Midwest, a question about partnership. Could you all elaborate on the process of working in partnership? Often the partners we work with are just small little groups of community members and working at the forwardmost community level. Isn't that right, Don?
Many of our partners are local organizations, faith-based organizations. So we have partners who are grassroots operations, and then we have some partners who are a good-sized organization. But the important things, like I mentioned before, is the relationship we have with these partners in that complement process, and also the relationship we have with the families that participate in the programs. So they see, again, they see us not only as a donor, but someone who's walking with them and being with them. They feel a solidarity.
Okay, thanks, Don. We've got a question from Judy House, who would like to know, what are the roadblocks in your efforts with local authorities, and what's happening to improve them? And Judy, I hope I'm framing your question right in that I think what we're talking about is advocacy. How do we work with communities to take on some of their own rights-seeking, if you will, and working with local governments specifically? Let's go to Vitaly for that.
You know, we have different kind of experience. We have good experience and not so very good experience in cooperation with local government. It depends. But in general, we have very good relationship with local government. And but sometimes, especially when election campaign, it's very hard to work with them because they want to force us to do what they want. And they're less thinking about community. But again, we're trying to avoid, we are not involved in this kind of campaign. But in general, of course, we are sign MOU with local government, a precise duty, responsibility between us, what we want to achieve. So we're talking about synergy, about joint effort. And so we only this way we hope, because if you're thinking about sustainability, our program, local government, local community should involve. And so in general, we have very good cooperation. We provide not only resources. For us, we are sharing our knowledge. We provide special training for local government. So we build partnership with both sides, with people and local community and government itself.
A question now about some of the grants that we give to families. Vitaly, you illustrated a perfect case of this, and grants for livelihoods. Can you talk a little bit about what amount of money are we talking about here? It's not a lot of money, is it?
Yeah, it's not a lot of money, but again, so average size, it's about $2,000 per family. It's not too much in Europe. Probably in Africa, but in Europe it's small amount. But in cooperation with schools, with parents, with local authority, with grassroots level organization, we select these people, we trap them, and so we don't have any problem to provide this kind of grants to vulnerable people. So size is about 2,000. And we have different kind of model, like sometimes they pay back, like sometimes it's real grant for them, depend on situation, family by family and country to country. So size is, again, it's not so big.
Don, how about you? I mean, we're not talking about a whole lot of investment at the community level. In other words, a little bit of cash goes a long way. Is that right?
Correct. I mean, in many places, just having access to a loan is very difficult, and the interest rates you have to pay once you have access to loans are just very high. In our programs, for example, our program in the Dominican Republic has what we call a rotating fund program. And families get maybe what would be the equivalent of $50 to be able to start their own little micro businesses or buy seeds. And the interesting thing, too, is a very low interest rate. But being part of a rotating fund or being part of a group, we're seeing a high rate of return on the loans as well. So most of the loans that are passed on have been able to, like the social fund, have been able to grow because families are participating and paying back, and we're seeing our funds, our revolving funds, growing because of that as well.
Question now from Michigan, and the question is, there are so many different organizations working on hunger and education and all of these other social problems. How do we know where to go to see if these organizations are effective, and if there is any networking between the organizations to stop things like duplication of program? Vitaly?
Yes, of course, we know. We try to cooperate. Of course, we're working with international and local organization who involve in this the same issue, hunger issue. And sometimes we combine and match fund to work together. So they are, you know, they have probably with different experience, probably the different focus. So we are not compete with each other. So if possible, of course, we try to join our effort.
Don, what about in your region? I mean, is there cooperation between NGOs like Church World Service and somebody else, or is it largely dispersed?
Many times when we're working, we're probably one of the only organizations in that area. But also in the response to an earlier question, we do coordinate with other agencies or have coordination meetings or networking meetings. Also being part of the ACT local regional Action by Churches Together regional forums that we share a lot of information. We try to coordinate where we can with local municipalities. For example, in Honduras, we do have a great relationship with a local municipality where we share and we train for other organizations, and we also participate in other meetings. As to see the impact, you know, I think it's a great question, and I believe that our work is very transparent, and I think that, again, like I said before, there aren't too many places where we are working that other organizations are, but when there are other organizations, we try to at least share ideas and communicate and coordinate as well as much as we can. In our regional food security program, we're sharing ideas and coordinating with 3 countries together at the same time, and we have coordination meetings, and all our partners participate with other organizations, so we're always, they're sharing information they're getting from us, and we're getting information that they're sharing with other organizations as well.
Thanks a lot. I want to go on and try to bring things to a close here, but I was wondering if you could just give us, each of you, an idea about why you do the work you do. Why is it you get up every day and go into the office? What drew you to this work, and why do you still do it? Vitaly?
You know, it's really, you remind me, one time I came to monastery and asked people there why they decided to, from my point of view, sacrifice and to spend all life in monastery. The answer was, you know, some people decided to serve, to be an engineer or doctor, but some people decided to serve God. So your question, myself, in my experience, more than 20 years, I decided to involve in this kind of support, because myself, I grew without parents, and so I spent at least 5 years in orphans. So, and I decided to, because I have this opportunity to help children, working for Church World Service.
Don, how about you? Why do you?
To me, I believe our work is very rewarding, and when I'm in the rural communities, and when families show the appreciation of what they're able to accomplish by the accompaniment, and when they get the aha moment that I'm able to on my own be able to provide for my family. If it's a single mother, if it's a family that did not have any access to means before and are able to put food on the table on a daily basis, or see that they're able to have healthier children, or be able to even send their children to school, dreams that they couldn't do before and thought they were unattainable. And when they share the stories with you, it's just, that's when you feel the most, you feel like, yes, you're doing the right thing, that you're making a change. And it's not about, it's more about them and their change, and I'm being a part of that. It's what's so rewarding.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Don Tatlock, Staff Liaison for Latin America and the Caribbean, and Dr. Vitaly Verona joining us from Belgrade, Serbia. Vitaly, have a good Saturday evening. Thank you both for your time. I just want to mention I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. If you have questions and you want to try to find some more answers, check out our website, churchworldservice.org. Coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll have another webinar beginning on how to improve your crop hunger walk. Hopefully you've heard some stories of change during our time together this afternoon to fuel you for the work to come. You'll receive an evaluation form by email. Please take time and fill that out. Give us an idea of how we did on this webinar and offer some suggestions for improvement in the future. Again, my name is Matt Hackworth. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us and hope to see you again at 3 o'clock Eastern. Be well.
The organizer has ended the session and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye.